And welcome in Broncos country for another episode of Building the Broncos. I'm your host, Carl Dumler, and joining me from the West Coast, Mr. Nick Kendell. How are you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty well. I got to go on a gorgeous hike this weekend. Living out, just bragging to you about it, living somewhere this close to mountains is great. I've been envious of all you Colorado folks for so many years. Now I'm out in Washington, so just an hour drive to Lake Serene and Brattleville Falls. Got that in. My legs are still barking, my knees especially, coming downhill, but excited to do that more and more. And obviously I'll be around Sunday when I can if the job permits. But I'm going to be outside as much as I can as well. I mean, I know that's you can't say the magic C word, but getting outside, getting some fresh air, disconnecting from the world for just a little bit, man, can't beat it.
Yeah, I'm with you there, man. I missed that, of course. And my wife and I and the kid heading to the sand dunes out there in the great state of Colorado this weekend. Very, very excited to kind of get out there and get to see some beautiful country once again. And so, yeah, that'll be good. Kind of make up a little bit for the Broncos being 0-2. And we'll get into that here in just a little bit. But we also want to let you know.
Speaking about beautiful, though, we got to say hello to some of these people in the chat already piling in. Toy Mafia coming in. AX Jones, William Israel, Diamond Rattler asking about Blake Bortles. So we're going to talk about that today, obviously. David Sharp coming in here. Joe Grissom, CW Designs, love you. Charlie Beagle, Terry Randall, Zach H, David Kilgore. Gosh, Darian P, Todd Anderson. The list goes on and on. Chris G, Travis Bruley. So, man, appreciate you guys. Adam Rocklevato. I feel like I haven't seen you for a second. Stephen Beckham, Roger Gutke. So, man, thank you guys so much for joining us today. And I'll hand it back off to you, Carl. But the chats were coming in. I just wanted to say hello.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I already see one from Kansas. Andy, appreciate that, joining us once again.
Rock chalk.
Always good to see another Kansas boy here. And it'll. Hopefully this can be a good conversation, guys. It's not going to be all doom and gloom. There's still some good things ahead and some promises. We've talked about 2020 being kind of hopefully a building block to 2021 a little bit, and it might just be a little bit crazier how they go about that. But anyway, before we get to all that, I want to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by sportsbetting.com. Make sure you head on over there to the website. Check out everything that's going on. You can bet on anything and everything, it seems like these days. They have just opened up there in the great state of Colorado for sports betting. And so please head on over there. They have some great odds. I know they had some of the best odds I saw for the Broncos if you were betting on the Broncos this last week. And you could have won some money, especially if you took the spread. Broncos
covered the win or loss. Yeah, covering the spread counts, right?
Yeah, exactly. You can still make some money. Broncos won for you. So like I said, head on over there, sportsbetting.com. They got lots of opportunities, lots of games, and you will not regret that. And also make sure that you're following us on Twitter. You can find me at Carl Dumler MHH and Nick at Nick Kendell MHH, and the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. Make sure you subscribe to our show wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a rating. And also make sure you head on over to milehighhuddle.com of Sports Illustrated. And know that our podcast is powered by Overtime Media. So let's get into the big conversation for today. That is Blake Bortles. The Broncos are it looks like they're going to sign this guy. And I mean, I guess there's a few different ways that you can look at this. But let's just start off looking at who Blake Bortles is as a quarterback. Obviously taken, third overall by Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. And had kind of a weird career. I think that's the best way to put it. He had moments of greatness, but just never seemed to quite have it all click for him. But he did have the time. His team did go to the AFC Championship game and should have won that game. They should have been in the Super Bowl with Blake Bortles, of all quarterbacks. So he's not the most incompetent quarterback in the world, Paxton Lynch. But he, like I said, he's just had this weird career, I would say. So you have some of the stats. How about you kind of let us into a little bit of who Blake Bortles is, just stats wise?
And we got a W coming in here. First from Levi. I hope he said I didn't mean to hit the W, but we appreciate it. But a W for talking, I guess, some Blake Bortles here. So yeah, his career stats to date. He has thrown for about 17,000 yards, 18,000 yards. His touchdown percentage is 3.9. 75 total interceptions, an interception percentage of 2.8. The completion percentage for the career under 60 at 59.3. So he's, yards per attempt at 6.7, yards per game at 226.3, and his career rating of 80.6. His best season was that 2015 season where he did put up some stats. But I got to say, Blake Bortles is somebody where you look at the stats and from a fantasy perspective, just that gross total, that's fine. But he's king of garbage time. The Jags have been, they're notoriously just a horrible franchise. Sorry to any Jags fans out there. I know some. God bless you. That's all I can say. Blake Bortles, outside of that 1 year, they had the really incredible, Saxonville, better than the Broncos 2015 defense. That turned out well. Mostly a garbage time quarterback as far as those stats come. There's a reason he wasn't signed right now. That's probably the end all be all of it. But he's serviceable as far as a backup type. You can get some production out of him. But it's kind of the same boat as Jeff Driskel. Maybe he's probably got less tools, but perhaps a little bit more accurate, which is crazy to say about Blake Bortles because Jeff Driskel's a good athlete. It's not a good time in Broncos country to be talking about this big splash signing being Blake Bortles. It is what it is. I don't know if you've seen The Good Place, a show on NBC. Christian Bell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that one, Jason Bortles, that's just going to be, I really hope we see him so I can just post that GIF all the time. I think that's probably the end all be all of it. Just Blake Bortles, not a situation you want to be in. I think we said multiple times on this podcast leading into the season where if Locke goes down, guys, we're talking about 8.5, 9 wins, kind of where we expected the Broncos to be. That was before Von Miller. That was before Cortland Sutton, AJ Boye, Philip Lindsay, blah, blah, blah. But we always said, if Drew Lock goes down, blast those predictions into the sun. Yep. Because behind him, we saw what Jeff Driskel did last year behind Matt Stafford and the Lions when he came in. Not good. So, we're in a bad situation. The quarterback's so incredibly important. Thank God it's not a season-ending injury for Locke. But, it's one that might have impact all season long. It's a shoulder injury on the throwing shoulder.
Right,
so,
and throwing shoulder injury.
Yeah, so yikes. It's not great.
It's not. And it's frustrating to see this happen to the Broncos. That just key player after key player after key player going down like this. It seems like there's one team every year that this seems to happen to. And unfortunately, it's the Broncos this year. Now, I'd say injuries are up across the board. You're seeing a lot of key guys go down. Saquon Barkley,
Nick Bosa.
I'm trying to think. Bosa went down as well. Yeah, so there's a lot of key guys going down. That shortened off season, no preseason, all those things definitely rearing their head right now. And the Broncos have been at the wrong end of that for some reason. There you go. And before we get into what this means for the Broncos, though, or what it means for Drew Lock, what it means for Driskel, Rippon, all those guys, I thought we'd get to David Kilgore's question here. And appreciate the super chat. If we do have a terrible season and end up picking in the top 5 of the draft, where do you guys see us going? Sewell or Lawrence?
I would say that right now, the top 5, it's very early and obviously with a weird season, given everything going on, it's kind of a hard time to evaluate these players just because the product is not the same right now, I would say, for college football. But I think there are 5 guys right now that are the likely top 5 picks. That'll change 100 times between now and the draft. But there's 3 quarterbacks prospects, obviously. Trevor Lawrence at Clemson. If you don't know him, go watch him. Justin Fields at Ohio State, also incredibly talented. It was actually rated a higher recruit coming into college football than Lawrence, I think, at 247. Either 247 or Rivals. They had him. One of them had Lawrence higher. One of them had Fields higher. And Trey Lance, also, I think he was a converted wide receiver to quarterback for North Dakota State. I wish he would have transferred somewhere so we could have seen him this year. That's just me being selfish. But 3 quarterbacks right now, getting a lot of hype. Then there's Penei Sewell, left tackle from Oregon. There are some, he's big, he's phenomenal, starting left tackle since freshman year. There are some out there that worry about his size. I think he's too big, and that's limiting his flexibility and could add injury potential for him. That's one of those things that you don't know really until you see later on. But hopefully we'll have a combine so we can kind of put some of those injury flexibility questions to rest. And then there's Micah Parsons, who's a linebacker and I guess sometimes can be kind of a pass rusher as well for Penn State, who is, he's a special linebacker. I think you'd have him higher than Devin White, who went 5 overall a couple years ago. So, those are the guys right now. If the Broncos are picking top 5, right now I'd lean towards Sewell. But if Locke comes back, let's say they are picking top 5, that means Locke's back. That probably means Locke doesn't play very well. Blame him or not, the shoulder, the guys around him, the offensive line. If the Broncos are picking top 5, we're going to have a conversation about the quarterback position because, it comes down to math in the end. 2 years of control for Locke versus 5 years for that rookie quarterback and a reset. So, we're putting the cart before the horse. If we're 0-4 after the Jets game, we'll have this conversation many times. But that's where my brain goes right now.
Right. You're right. And it is, if you have a chance for a generational talent like Trevor Lawrence, I don't think you question that. Even if Drew Lock looks decent, if you got a chance, it's kind of like what the Cardinals did. Kyler Murray, where they're like, okay, yes, we took a quarterback top 10 last year, but we got this guy that we think can be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And Kyler Murray has looked good. He's looked, he has his moments.
That's not a good enough word.
Okay.
He's like number 3 in the MVP race, I think.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And so you don't question that. I love Drew Lock. I think I've made that very, very clear on here that I think he could be a very high serviceable quarterback in the NFL. I don't see that. I see that he could become Derek Carr and maybe even a little bit better. High ceiling of Matthew Stafford. But at the same time, this is now injury number 2, both to his throwing arm. Both have cost him games. Right. He had his hand and his shoulder. And those things start adding up quick. And he's shown at times he's not great at protecting himself because he tries to do a little too much.
And that's not always on the offensive line. That's not always on the offensive line. I think people need to distinguish that.
Right, exactly. And so there's just things that make you have to have that conversation, like you said. Now, if you still believe Drew Lock can be that man, then you go get Sewell. And you just say, okay, here's our left tackle for the next, hopefully, 15 18 years, and you're excited about that he's going to be there to protect your franchise quarterback. I have no problem with that either. Really, when we're talking top 5 guys, we're talking guys that can change the franchise by bringing them on. And I think Sewell can do that. I think Lawrence can do that. I think Justin Fields can do that. I think I question a little bit Micah Parsons just because off-ball linebacker, how much of an impact can they really make?
I need to answer this. No, I'm not saying OT over Lawrence. If the Broncos are picking 1 overall, it's going to be Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is going to be the pick. I think there are 3 teams in the league right now that I can definitively say they wouldn't trade out of that, or they would trade out of that pick. The Chiefs with Mahomes, the Ravens with Jackson, and the Cardinals with Murray. I even think how good Russell Wilson's playing this year, the Seahawks have shopped him around a couple times because of the contract. I think they might even do a reset because of the contract and everything. So I would not take Sewell over Lawrence. It's not a shot at Locke. It's just opportunity than anything. But again, that's the Broncos getting the 1st overall pick, and we are just ending week 2. So I think we saw how they played last week against the Steelers. They're decimated. Steelers are one of the best teams in the AFC. We'll call it. One of the best defenses the Broncos are going to face this year. And the Broncos had a chance in the last couple minutes of the game with Jeff frickin' Driskel at quarterback without Cortland Sutton. So this team, I don't think they're going to get the 1st overall pick. They're fighting too hard. There's too much talent. They're too good defensively. They're too disciplined defensively. Now, if they start losing a bunch of close ones in the middle and the team, I guess, not sells out, that's the wrong word, but doesn't buy in to the current, we already have comments from Shelby Harris, but if the team doesn't buy into Fangio and everything, then maybe you can see it fall apart. But right now, 1st overall pick, we're talking a lot of things have to happen for that hypothetical.
Yeah,
a lot.
No, I'm with you there. The Jets, come on. If you want to feel bad for a franchise, go watch the Jets. At least the Broncos are making games interesting. They're just getting blown out. And you got to feel for Sam Darnold. I've made it pretty clear how much I loved him as a quarterback. And I think if he was in the right situation, I think we're seeing more and more how important it is to put a quarterback in the right situation with the right kind of players around them. You have to build around them. You cannot have a quarterback and say, you have to go out and make all these guys great.
Yeah.
No, especially when they're young, they need some talent to help them out. The Bills have done that with Josh Allen. I don't think Josh Allen is a great quarterback, but he's playing like one. Yeah. They went and got speedsters that could really take advantage of his big arm. They've really worked at being able to spread things out to get the run game going. It's just been working well for them. Lamar Jackson, obviously, the Chiefs with Mahomes. They've done great. They're great talents, but they've made them into superstars because of what they've done to build around them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we found Justin Fields' burner account, just changing the first name there. But Justin Fields might be better than Trevor Lawrence. We'll see. Yeah. And I see people getting a little bit upset. They're already talking draft. Sorry, guys. The question prompted it. And Carl and I, in our heart of hearts, we're draft guys. I mean, we loved the team building aspect of this, and especially the draft. So sorry if we go too far down that rabbit hole. But this is building the Broncos. So, we got Paul coming in. Paul, love you. Thank you so much. 2020 dropping like flies. Did a healthy Jake Butt alter the universe? Maybe. I mean, 2020, I'm really expecting aliens coming out soon. Sasquatch is going to drop the tell-all piece probably in the National Enquirer. Maybe Cthulhu coming from the Pacific because I just moved out. I mean, this 2020 is crazy. But back to the quarterback situation here. I think the biggest thing, and the good comment here coming in from ZW, the all holds up. I believe Locke will succeed. I definitely think so as well. And I still believe in Locke. We're going to get him back. How healthy? How soon? What's the state of the team at that point? Because how the rate at the Broncos are dropping. Carl and I are going to be taking the field by week 7. So RIP to us and any potential life we have after that. But I think that the quarterback position, it starts and stops there. It always does. And for the Broncos this season, I think they have a roster around the quarterback position where they're not going to totally fall out and they're not going to tank. But I do think that 2020's gotten off the hinges. You're missing your best offensive player. You're missing your best defensive player now. It's not a great place to be. But there are still plenty of positives and plenty of things to watch with this team going forward. So
right. And so here's a couple things that I want to say just about the what Blake Bortles means for the Broncos. I don't think that this is a sign that they are worried about Drew Lock being out for a long time. If they were worried about that, they would put him on IR because this year you can have him on IR for three weeks, bring him back the 4th week. They have decided that they're not going to put Lock on IR. So I think that that's a sign that they view this as going to be on the shorter end of the 2 to 6 weeks than the longer end. And I think this is more a sign of their not really believing that Rippon is a guy that they're going to want to see come into the game. And also Jeff Driskel, he is getting himself killed out there. His pocket awareness he made some nice throws, actually. I will say that I was pleasantly surprised at how well he played considering the situation. It was not perfect by any means, but anybody that thought that was going to be perfect. But to come in against the number 1 defense in football and to actually go throw 2 touchdowns and get the team in a position to win there at the end. Now, you can't take a sack on 4th down to end the game. That's just stupid. I don't know what was going on there. Like I said, his pocket awareness is not great, but I think they are a little worried of how can he hold up when he's going to be going against some great pass rushers over these next couple weeks. And, if he gets hurt, you do not want Rippon being the guy that comes in. I obviously didn't get to watch him in training camp this year, but I watched him last year, and it was bad. I'm telling you, people, it was really bad.
He's going to be a good coach sometime. That's essentially what he is right now. He's a player coach.
Yep.
He's buddies with Locke.
He was. I don't think he threw a pass on time when I was at practice. And I was there for a few days. Like he could find the guy that was open, but it was too late. If you wait for them to get open, you're too late in the NFL. You have to have anticipation, and he does not have that ability.
Yep, and it's both pre and post snap. He did not have any sense at all that guy was coming. What's the first thing you do, Carl, when you see a blitzer or you sense a blitzer?
You call the hot route.
Yeah, hot route, but you want to look to the area where that blitzer is coming from because they're vacating the space. And
right, that's any sort of read over there.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, saw that coming. There were guys open. But I mean, credit to the Steelers too. Great defense. I mean, that's one of the best pass rushes the Broncos are going to play all season, and good scheme as well. I mean, they do a good job disguising those coverages, sending 5 guys a lot. So it's a tough matchup for the Broncos. It's really unfortunate. Sorry, I popped in the mic there. It's still getting used to it, but it made me laugh. Healing the Broncos or repairing the Broncos. How about? Man, there's got to be a clever one in there. That's a good. You're on the right path though, Charlie. I appreciate that one. And Draymond Jones hurt as well. That was my breakout guy. I'm really bummed about Draymond. We haven't even talked about that. So, talking a lot of quarterbacks here. I guess the next thing to do is to pivot towards Drew Lock. Obviously, shoulder injury. Now the second time, we're not going to talk about Drew Lock as far as the upcoming draft pertains, because we'll have that conversation if we have to. But right now, it's just kind of spinning the wheels and hypotheticals. Drew Lock not being placed on the IR. What does that mean to you, Carl?
Like I said, I think that means they think it's a minor injury, because especially this year, when you can put guys on that short-term IR for three weeks and bring them back, it makes sense to have that extra spot, because again, you've got all these guys who are injured, who are going to be missing great parts of the season, like a Draymond Jones, Boye, all those guys. The fact that they're not doing that shows me that they're really hoping he can come back before the bye week. And otherwise, again, why wouldn't you just put him on IR, bring him back right before the bye week, give him that week of extra practice, and then let him play? So I think there's a good chance that maybe he misses this game and the Jets game, and then he's back for, is it the Chiefs game? Is that the next one?
I believe so, which
okay.
Unfortunate, because the Chiefs didn't look great against the Chargers last week, but I think they have a pretty underrated defense. I mean, Chris Jones, Frank Clark, they can get after it. So as long as Elijah Wilkinson's there at right tackle, which crazy, the whipping boy. Last year we complained about Elijah Wilkinson more than we did about Garrett Bowles, but Garrett Bowles was typically whipped on because of the first round pick, and just, that's kind of how the media can tend to spin things. They have a perception of some guy, and especially when they have that pedigree. But Wilkinson is the problem in the offensive line. That being said, right now the left guard and the center position are also struggling, I would say, especially Reisner, which is unfortunate. I mean, he's not looked great. A couple of pull blocks here and there, but he's not looked good. So it's not good right now. I mean, we always knew that the offense would be a little bit clunky to start the year. I had a feeling that it would be more the passing game, specifically the timing between the quarterback and the receivers. But looking across the league, it's offensive lines. They've been cutting back on padded practices and reps and everything, and that's hurt offensive lines early in the season. But the fact that they didn't get these scrimmages or the preseason games, offensive line is as far behind to start a season as I can ever remember, and guys are getting hurt, I think, partially because of that, especially the Broncos.
Well, Mundunga's coming in here. Why are Broncos fans freaking out? Locke is out temporarily. He's coming back. Why would we tank for a quarterback when we have one? And Kaepernick, he sucked before he was out of the NFL. The problem is right tackle, not quarterback. Yeah, it's so here's the thing. I'm not saying tank or anything like that. The season's not completely lost after 2 games. Honestly, if they can go 1-on-1 in these games where Locke is gone, and they can maybe steal a game later in the season, they can maybe get there at that 7th spot for the playoffs. At least get back to 8-8, not have a losing season. I think that's very much possible for this season. You and I were talking right before the show. As much as the Broncos are going to hurt losing Cortland Sutton, these young players are at the weapons position are really stepping up. KJ Hamler, I'll say it. I know we talked about it before the show. I will say this.
I take everyone back. Everyone take off your shirt or something. Step away from whatever you're watching right now. Carl's about to deliver something very hot.
KJ Hamler looked better than Jerry Jeudy in that game. He was.
You're gonna upset some people.
I know, but he was getting himself open. And I'm not trying to say Jerry Jeudy is bad. I'm just trying to say KJ Hamler really surprised me at how quickly he was really getting himself into that game plan, getting himself ready for some big plays, made some great catches.
That's the thing,
big moments. That was something he didn't always show in college. Jerry Jeudy still he had another drop and a big moment that they needed a big catch. Now he had some other great catches. He had the one where he got lit up and still held on to that football. That was something we were questioning before the Broncos drafted him or even after they drafted him. How does he do when he has to go make a catch in traffic? He held on to it, but there's been others where he's short-armed it, trying to make too big of a play. And those are things that I am really, really excited about. So I think the Broncos offense can still be explosive even without Courtland Sutton. Noah Fant looks like he is a superstar in the making. I mean, he was making some great players. I mean, we're talking maybe one of the best safeties in football and Fitzpatrick, that he was winning his routes. We're talking about Devin Bush, the guy that they traded to get Noah Fant in the traded draft spots where they took Devin Bush, they took Noah Fant, Broncos took Noah Fant. I'd say Noah Fant looks like the better player of the two right now. I mean, he was the guy making
back-to-back plays. It was gorgeous. Yeah. The touchdown and the 2-point conversion. Chef kiss, man. It
looked so easy. He looks like a superstar in the making. So again, if you get Locke back and get a few things figured out, the second half of the season looks much easier than the first half. I think the Broncos could get themselves back on track. But the reason that we're having a little bit of this conversation is second injury for Locke. Only 2 more years controlled on his contract compared to the 5 that you would have with a rookie coming in. Trevor Lawrence looks like a generational talent. Drew Lock looks like a guy with some potential to be a great talent, but we haven't seen it yet. Trevor Lawrence, I think day one he steps on the field, most are expecting that he is a top 10 quarterback.
I'm sorry that I hear noise upstairs. It's something's going on with my wife or the puppy. They're right above me. So I will give a call maybe or text, but I definitely agree with you in that regard. The thing is also when we're talking here about David Kilwer coming out, are you concerned about Locke getting hurt now for 2 years in a row, injury prone? Already had injuries at Mizzou. So this is a concern. It's something you have to consider. And also if let's say Locke is injured again and he comes back, but that shoulder is obviously not right. I mean, we saw it with Cam Newton. I mean, last year, a couple of years, he didn't look like the same guy. I thought he was washed. And now he looks, I mean, they lost to the Seahawks, which nobody's playing better football than Russell Wilson right now, so I don't fault them for that. But I mean, he looks great. So that shoulder injury, it could zap him a season. And then where are we? What are we talking about? Are we talking about going into next year with another Drew Lock evaluation year pushed back for year 3? It's just at that point, like you can't just keep pushing it back, especially if you have a chance to take a guy that you're going to be in the same place with. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. We're talking way hypothetical because I don't want that to dominate the show. But definitely, David, it's a concern, and it's something that we're going to have to consider in the overall stew that is this upcoming offseason. But first, we got to get Drew Lock back out there, see what he looks like, because he can put us to bed real quick with all this conversation. He can come back and play great, which awesome. That would be fantastic. And you'll get Sutton back next year. You're getting all Noah Fant will be year 3. KJ Hamler, Jerry Jeudy year 2. I mean, it stacks up great for 2021. But right, we got to get there.
Right. Mundunga's coming back again. Start Dotson, get Boye back, and trade for Will Fuller. Right tackle fixed, cornerback fixed, wide receiver fixed. Boom.
I'm really afraid that people are making Dotson to be something that he isn't. He was not very good last year. I mean, Wilkinson's struggling. Don't get me wrong, and he might be better than Wilkinson, but I don't think it's going to be very much of an issue or very obvious of a switch. And then also you have the chemistry concerns between right guard and right tackle with Glasgow. So, I mean, Wilkinson's obviously not the answer at right tackle. The Broncos got really unfortunate with Juwan James sitting out and another year off. What a bust of a signing that's been. Right tackle is just cursed. Right tackle is the 2020 of the Broncos positions. I like your positivity, Mundungus. This season isn't over. Broncos are still fighting. The fact they were even in that game at the end when they're so injured against the Steelers at Pittsburgh, which is, again, I think one of the better teams at the AFC. This team's fighting. There is talent. And the defense is going to keep them in many games. It's just, unfortunately, with how many injuries there are and how decimated they are, and now the quarterback's out, I think the hopes for a playoffs this year probably went out the window. I mean, they really, if they win this week, gosh, I'm back on the train, baby. But I think that's a tall order.
Yeah.
We got Jim coming in.
Sorry.
Jim said, hit the thumbs up. Jim, we always appreciate it when you come in and comment that. I think Carl might have done that there with John working the background there. We got Darian coming in. Are we going to talk about Fant feasting on the number 1 team defending the tight end in Pittsburgh? Guys, Fant's now that – okay, here's a good question for you. In the passing game specifically, because I think this is going to become a more run-oriented team just because you don't want Driskel or Bortles throwing the ball 40 times a game. God help us all. This is going to become more run-oriented team. But the offensive weapon side of things in the pass game, is Fant the number one weapon on this team? Is he the go-to guy? And if so, scheme him the goddamn ball. Get him the ball. We have 4 quarters of football. We have 2 halves. If Fant's your best passing weapon, get him the ball more than 1 half a game.
Yeah. No, I mean, when they've targeted him, he has been wide open. And you can't cover him one-on-one. He's too big, too fast. Linebackers, safeties can't keep up with him. Obviously, like I said, Minkah Fitzpatrick struggled to keep up with this guy. We got, again, their linebacker, Devin Bush, a guy that ran a 4.5 40 at the combine. Supposed to be one of the most athletic off-ball linebackers in football. Couldn't keep up with him. And so, yes, you got to figure out ways to get him more involved in the offense instead of just these about 4 or 5 plays a game, because he dominates on those 4 or 5 plays. You got to give him probably that at least 8 to 10 targets a game, I would say. If you're not doing that, you're not doing your job right. And that should just open up everything for everybody else. KJ Hamler being able to go deep or run some of those quick in routes, slant routes, whatever you want to do with him. Jerry Jeudy, he's just got I don't know what's going on with Jerry Jeudy. He's just I think he's just trying to do too much.
Yeah.
I think there was so much hype coming into this season. I mean, he even did his own YouTube channel. I follow him on YouTube, of all places. I've done some of his workouts from, is it Instagram or Snapchat? I can't remember which one it is, but I've done some of his workouts that he does. And I've talked to him on there a couple times. I told him to slow down. I couldn't keep up with him. But I think there's just been this hype bubble around this guy of he is going to be the next superstar wide receiver in the NFL. And I think he's just trying to live up to that too much. And so it's making him think way too much on the field. I mean, you watch him there at Alabama. He is so fast in and out of breaks because he knows their offense so well. He just knows what he's supposed to be doing and just goes and makes plays. And this year he's just, like I said, he's just short-arming things because he was wanting to go and try to make a play. He's trying to get that ball in as quick as possible so he can make a cut. And it's just not ending well for him.
It's unfortunate, but it's been 2 games, so we are not here to bury the guy. I mean, after 2 games last year, then yikes. But, I mean, here we are. So, I mean, we've seen the flashes, and the All-22, he's getting open. I do think that, unfortunately, specifically Jerry Jeudy, I mean, he's still going to get open, but he's such a precision player, and Bortles / Driskel are not accurate quarterbacks. God, anything timing or precision reliant, especially that's Jeudy, not great. But Jeudy is number 1 wide receiver now. So honestly, fantasy football advice, if you're looking for a wide receiver 3 or 4 to stash, I think Tim Patrick is probably a guy who's I don't think Tim Patrick's a really good wide receiver by any means, but just the type of wide receiver he is, losing Sutton, I think they're going to have to get him targets because throwing it down the field and hoping the guy can go up and get it, that's Driskel. Otherwise, going to pull it down and either run it or get sacked. But I think
you watch a lot of his throws were high.
Oh yeah,
that's where he wants to throw it.
Yeah. So yeah, no, absolutely. That's definitely going to be a big thing for them. And again, coming back to KJ Hamler, really shocked about how good he was in that first game. I think that obviously the speed's there, the juice is there, the separation's there, but his hands were really good. I was really worried about him coming out of Penn State. He'd pull the ball in, caught it in his frame a lot. I mean, he had one of the highest drop rates of any wide receiver in college football last year. He made a couple spectacular catches, really good form. So, I mean, and this is with the abbreviated offseason because of the hamstring injury, even on top of the abbreviated offseason everyone had. So great news for KJ Hamler. I mean, really great news. So I couldn't be more excited about that. There's plenty of exciting things to talk about there on the offense. And I mean, it was good to see on defense. I thought Bradley Chubb he still doesn't have a sack yet, but you're starting to see the pressure there. Obviously, teams are rotating towards him because the Tauchu is not Von Miller. And also, Justin Simmons had a pretty good game. So there are things to be positive about on the defensive side of the ball. I feel like this is becoming an offense-oriented podcast. And I wanted to talk a little bit of Michael Ojemudia as well. I know that a lot of people were upset with him in that game. rookie cornerback, late third round pick, had some promise that week 1 game, and then gave up that big touchdown pass and a couple issues there in the Steelers game. So what are your thoughts on Ojemudia after the up and down performance that was week 2?
The Broncos put him in an impossible situation. The Steelers did a great job of scheming Juju Smith-Schuster to line up against him most plays. And that's a mismatch. And they asked him to do a lot of one-on-one coverage where really the defense is supposed to be more zone, but he was asked to do a ton of man coverage. And he was playing way off. You could tell he was really worried about getting beat deep, especially, he got beat deep early. So, of course, you're going to take a few more steps back, and then they could complete all the easy, quick ones. And so he was just put into an impossible situation. He's got to do better, obviously, but you can tell he's a rookie. You can tell that he's not quite ready for that kind of matchup in the NFL. The Broncos really missed Boye in that game. I think if they had Boye, I think they win that game. Honestly, I don't think he gives up that big touchdown down the field. I think he can cover a little bit quicker on some of those routes. I think he's better than Juju Smith-Schuster right now. When he was healthy. And so I think that would have eliminated a lot of plays. And then, of course, that moves Ojemudia to then the number 3 cornerback spot, allowing you to kind of do a couple other things that you want to do. So that just – it's unfortunate. And it's the situation the Broncos are in because of some injuries. And so got to hope that Boye gets back really soon. They absolutely need him on that secondary.
Yeah, and people are also commenting in the chat about Ojemudia's drop pass. Good call on that one. That was definitely a bummer as well. But, look, he's going to have some up and down games. And you had said it best. He became the number 2 cornerback, the primary boundary cornerback with Callahan, number 1. And that just put him in a situation where he's not really ready for that. I think that he's going to be fine. And also good comment here. I meant to bring that up. Chase Wellner. Good to see you, Chase. Read that Fant did workouts with TJ Hushmanzada. That's what.
There you go.
I remember that ESPN fantasy commercial with him.
Yeah.
He said, talked about dropping his hips and selling routes and everything, working with TJ Hushmanzada at his agency. So looking Fant out there. He's 6'5", 250, 255, and he's out there running like a wide receiver. So good luck. I think he's really going to become the primary focus point of this offense. And he has to be. He really has to be at this point. So we got Kevin Peterson coming in here. If there's any time to pull the plug or time to plug in Dotson, it's his former team. He knows their tendencies. I have one point of contention with you there, Kevin. This offense, while it is still the Bruce Arians offense, it's the Tom Brady Bruce Arians offense. So how much the tendencies are going to be the same, that is I'm not for sure. I think that's an issue. I think that this offense, it's kind of, you mentioned it, I think it was you mentioned it last week, where it was that bastardized, excuse my language, that's a curse word here, but that version of the Kubiak versus Peyton Manning offense that was just not working, trying to use the pistol formation to make it work. That's ugly, not working. So we'll see what happens. Use Fant like the Raiders use Waller. I think they're probably going to start having to do that. Maybe you're going to see KJ Hamler in that Henry Ruggs role. They do not have a Cortland Sutton. Neither do we anymore. Man, I'm so sad about Sutton. He's one of my favorites. He's so fun to watch. Those catches, too. He made some great plays. God bless it. I definitely think you're going to see Fant blossom. What is he? He's only 22 years old this year? 23, maybe? So if the best is yet to come for Fant. You're going to really see him. If you have Fant on your fantasy team, good job, because he's going to be a beneficiary of everything that's happened. Obviously, it'd be better if Locke was still there, but...
Right. If Locke gets back here in the next couple weeks, it would not surprise me to see Noah Fant end up with 1,000 yards this year. I think he can have that kind of season. All right, Harry Burgos coming in. With Sutton out, don't you think it is now imperative to incorporate 2 tight end sets with Fant and Albert O week 3 and give Tyree Cleveland a chance to shine?
Albert O is extremely, extremely limited right now in what he can do. I think that's the bottom line. And Fangio said it entering the season. Until Albert O shows a better desire and propensity to block, he's probably not going to see the field. A lot of people like to give a hard time about Fant about his blocking. I think he's closer to average, honestly, than many people would equate. And people, I think, overrate Vinette and Butts blocking. But Albert Okwuegbunam, not a great route runner right now. Doesn't do a great job. Let's creating separation. And, he's big and he can run down the field fast. There's a lot of tools there, but it needs time to ferment. So, right. I mean, you can get him out there for, 5-6 plays a game where he's going to be busting the seam or a red zone weapon. You can see it. But I think for now, especially again, I think this team is going to be more run oriented now. It kind of has to be that you're getting Alberto out there as an inline blocker. It's going to be bad.
Yeah.
You're putting, Wilkinson by himself out. I mean, it might even be harmful to have Alberto and Wilkinson. I've heard right tackles and tackles say that they actually would prefer not to have a tackle or a tight end next to him because that can kind of throw off where they're balanced in front of that guy. So right. I don't know. Until Alberto can block, I don't think he's going to see the field very much.
I'm more excited about that second part that you mentioned there, Harry, the Tyree Cleveland.
Yeah.
That's a guy I wouldn't mind seeing get at least a few touches during the game. From everything I've heard, he was one of the most consistent wide receivers of all of training camp. And for a rookie, that's saying something. For a guy to be able to go out there, know what he's supposed to be doing on every single play, and obviously bring something on special teams for the Broncos. But I wouldn't mind seeing him get a few more plays on offense with Cortland Sutton down, just bring a little bit more explosive weapon to the Broncos. He can also go up and get the football. He showed that at Florida a few different times. And so that's the one I agree that give him a chance to shine. I'm with you on Alberto. I think that really you bring him in. I wouldn't mind him being active. Like I said, I think there are 5 to 6 plays a game where he could be an asset to the offense. When you're talking those red zone plays, I'm thinking of that overthrow of Noah Fant in the end zone. I'm not saying Alberto goes up and gets that one, but those are the type of plays that are designed for a player like him, especially with a guy like Jeff Driskel, who loves to throw it a little bit higher and let his guys go up and make plays. Alberto fits him better than probably some of the other tight ends. But it's at the same time, you only bring him in on obvious passing situations because otherwise you have keyed off the defense. Okay, this is a passing situation. They do not bring him in as a run blocker. And so you just can't give away your offense. You can't make it where they can just tee off on the quarterback. So if it's a third down play, if it's a red zone play that requires a pass, he makes total sense. Beyond that, right now, he's a year away.
Yeah, and I think if the season does get away, I'm not ready to say that yet, even though the injuries are stacking up. Talk to me after week 4. If the Broncos are 0-4 after that Jets game, it's a SOS from the Titanic here in Denver. But I think much besides those packages, like we talked about. So that's definitely a way to go. And if they're 0-4 and a lot of people are injured, then you're definitely going to see it. If there were a bunch of injuries at tight end position too, you'd see him. And that kind of brings us here to Terry Randall. We need to see what Ajim can do. Well, DeMarcus Walker's injured. Draymond Jones is hurt for
you're going to see him.
So now it's going to be Ajim. Ajim is raw. I am a little bit concerned about his leverage. I'm curious to see what role they utilize him in, what techniques all across the defensive line. But we're going to see Ajim now, so look out for it. Number 95. It'll be interesting to watch, see how he grows. But he's another guy where you're going to see flashes, but he's probably a guy who needed a year in the fermentation chamber to really kind of see what he's going to be.
All right, we got a lot of people who are talking about the Vannett signing. Vannett was an embarrassing signing. How you fall with no one around you. Well, talk to Eric Decker on that one. He was the king of tripping over the invisible sprinkler head. But no, I mean, that was tough to see him on that play fall down. It does happen every once in a while. He tried to turn his body, tripped over his own feet. I have fake teeth because that happened to me. Got tripped on my own feet trying to make a turn and went headfirst into a chair. So I am one that understands why that happened to him. He did not show great as a blocker. That was my biggest issue with him this last game. He was not consistent, I would say, at that kind of job, and that's why you brought him in.
I really thought that signing was didn't make sense to me because I thought he was essentially an equivalent to Jeff Hireman, where you're going to play him in line. He can do a little bit yak wise, and he's supposed to be the better inline blocker, but it's really just a lateral move, and you're burning money when you're doing that. So maybe he's healthier than Jeff Hireman. Maybe you can get that. I see some people saying Alberto is a good blocker. He's a good blocker at Missouri. I guess I really disagree with you there. Did not see that at all. And when it was kind of the chip and go kind of thing. And also ask Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio literally pooped on him before the season started, saying that until he blocks, he's not going to see the field, essentially. So
yeah,
it is what it is.
Kevin Peterson coming back, letting you know what he was talking about. He knows the edge rusher's tendencies is what I'm saying, bro. I don't care about what Brady is doing. I care about what the edge rushers are doing against our right tackle.
Maybe. I mean, that's a point. He did go against him in practice last year. Jason Pierre-Paul, Shaq Barrett coming home. So maybe I think that you're probably going to see Elijah Wilkinson for at least another week. And God help us all. I mean, I feel bad for him because he wasn't supposed to be in this position, but that's football, and here we are. So it's not just the Broncos, but also a lot of teams are in the same boat as far as injuries. Not quite the same level of leaks that the Broncos boat has, but here we are.
Yeah. We've been telling you on these podcasts that Munchak really loves Wilkinson. There's just something there that he sees something that nobody else sees. And for most of the time, in Munchak, we trust. But this is one of those situations I think he's got to get over his man crush a little bit. But again,
let's be real, though. I'm not a Wilkinson stan by any means, but TJ Watt is phenomenal. TJ Watt was looking like a young Von Miller out there. I mean, part of that was because Wilkinson isn't great, but like he is his bend, his burst, like he's really good. He probably should have been the defensive player of the year last year. He was that good. And I mean, we saw that last week. So I don't think we're going to see another speed rusher of that caliber this season at that right tackle position. So that's as hard as it's going to get. So to be fair, that one game sample size against TJ Watt, who's absolutely just an incredible finesse edge rusher right now, I think that is a not totally fair to Wilkinson. By all means, continue to say that he doesn't belong out there as the right tackle. I agree with you, but I think that it's not going to be as bad as that was.
Right. I'm with you there. All right. Mundungus asking a question here. When do we get Lindsey and Boye back? Lindsey is supposed to be week to week, but it does sound like it's probably not this week.
I would imagine probably not the next 2 weeks because it's a short turnaround after that for a Thursday night game in New Jersey against the Jets. So I think you'll probably after that, there's going to be a mini bye week after that. And that's probably where you're going to start to see some of these guys. You'll really start to hear information about them and they'll try to integrate them back in when they have that larger time period to get things going again.
Now, Boye, they put on the short-term IR, right?
I believe so.
So
somebody hit me in the chat.
He has to miss week 2, 3, and 4 for sure.
Yes.
And then he can come back week 5.
Yep.
So that'll be the earliest that you could see him. I haven't heard for sure if that's what their plan is yet, but I don't think it was an injury where they felt like he's going to miss half the season or anything like that. Draymond Jones, It sounds like that kind of injury. Boye did not sound like that kind of injury. I mean, it's a shoulder thing. It's more of a pain tolerance than anything else. How much can he handle? Right, yeah. But I think he can come back from that. It didn't sound like there was any kind of structural damage within the shoulder. So I think he should be good to go week 5.
Yeah, I agree. So, and he'll be limited. He might be out there in a sling, but that is what it is. So I'm worried about both those injuries as far as nagging. Ben Lee coming in, right? Read my mind. Turf toe tends to be a nagging recurring injury. So, I mean, that could really hurt the Broncos for the whole season with Lindsey, and that's an issue that I'm concerned about with Boye and Locke as well. So we'll see. Those guys might be back, but maybe not 100%. I see a lot of people asking, why aren't we cutting James? A lot of people in the chat. We got some smart listeners in here. Why are the Broncos keeping James? Dead money. I mean, essentially, you have to keep him with how much dead cap you'd have for moving on from him. You have a shot with him next year. Hopefully, he'll come back and provide it. But, I mean, and after that, you can move on. You still have a decent dead cap hit, but it's after – it was originally going to be after this year, but because of the – player waiver or whatever, we're not allowed to say the C word, that pushed it back a year. So 2021, we'll see.
It costs more to cut him than to keep him on the roster.
Yeah.
That's the gist of the situation. I mean, they could cut him. It's just going to hurt them cap wise in a year where the cap is going down. And they just can't do that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we got some positivity here. Sorry if you guys hear the puppy whining. I'm calling it right now. Broncos 31, Buccaneers with a pirate flag there. You need to get rid of that. That's a good omen for them. 17, need to stop the run and score points with Driskel. Brady can't win in Denver. He has a losing record against us. I think the game is going to be close. I do think the game is going to be close. It'll probably come down to the final drive again. But I won't predict on it until Saturday, but I think it's going to be another close game because that's just this Broncos team. I don't think they're going to quit. It's good, disciplined defense. That's going to keep them in games.
Terry Randall kind of agreeing with a few people in here. Vannett is a bust. Bring in Albert. #state of being. Getting back to the tight end position. I don't think either. Albert's not going to solve the problem on offense.
No.
The Broncos have enough weapons as is. I mean, Noah Fant is looking like a great weapon. Jake Butt can do a few things in the receiving game. Of course, you got KJ Hamler, who I said looked better than Jerry Jeudy this last week. A few people agreed with that in the comments. You still got Jerry Jeudy, who can go out there and make some plays. You still got a great running back in Melvin Gordon, who we haven't even talked about his great catch. Part of why we were saying that the Broncos wanted to bring him in is because he can make some plays in the receiving game, and he showed that. And I thought he had a pretty decent game considering the team that they were playing and a team that was pretty much saying, beat us with anybody else but the run game. And he still picked up some pretty decent yards in that one. So I think they got enough weapons. Vannett, obviously, he's got to show better as a blocker. That's why you brought him in. That's why you're paying him. And he didn't handle that as well as he should have. I just don't know how much more Albert brings to the game compared to what Vannett brings to the game right now.
I think Albert, you'll probably see that be kind of a threshold this season for when you tip the scales and you're seeing Albert O as the getting way more snaps, maybe even potentially the tight end too. That means they moved on from 2020, our eyes are on the playoffs or trying to compete, to we need to get these young guys reps because 2020 is over. And while some of the fan base is obviously on that, given how much Trevor Lawrence talk there is, I think that you won't see that from the Broncos for probably at least another 3 to 4 weeks. I mean, they'd have to be like 0-5, 0-6 to get there, I think. So 0-4, I think I'll probably be ready to get there. And that's a good comment there, Charlie. But I think that's probably the threshold. Once you start to see Alberto really take over, and he's going to make mistakes and be limited and limit kind of what you do on offense, but he brings some exceptional tools. So, that's, I think best for him would be to spend the season in the fermentation chamber and kind of slowly, gradually be brought upon, kind of like that player bouncing between AAA and the major leagues when they're really young. But that's probably what it's going to end up being. And I think another reason, if the Broncos had a dominant inline blocker, let's say they had Nick Boyle as their tight end one, then you could probably feasibly bring in Albert O a little bit more. But you already have Noah Fant, who does all those things well. I mean, tight end, if you want to call it tight end, that's fine. But that's like saying wide receiver is wide receiver. And we all know that Calvin Johnson and Wes Welker might as well be playing different positions. They are asked to win in such different ways. So not as much as the tight end, not that dichotomized, but it's the same for the tight end as well. And there's the Y tight end, typically in line, and the F tight end, who's a little bit more of a mover. So I think, again, it's just kind of how the Broncos match up right now because they already have Fant, who is blossoming into a superstar. That kind of limits Albert O, at least what type of niche and how he wins right now. So that's why he has to be a better blocker. You can't feasibly, you're not giving up snaps from Fant to play Albert O. You're just not.
Right.
Dumb.
Right. Chris Hernandez coming in here with a great comment. I hope to see a better game plan using our players' strengths soon. And before you go, MHH fam, # click those little thumbs up. I do want to say one thing about this. Part of the game plan thing, this has been, I will say Shermer has gotten kind of a raw situation, not only with Locke going down with injury, but game one, you're probably designing your game around getting the ball to Cortland Sutton. He goes down 2 days before the game. So all of a sudden you have to scramble and try to figure out this new game plan of how you're going to try to attack the Titans. Then, of course, Cortland Sutton goes down right there at the beginning of right there at the beginning of the game against the Steelers pretty quick. So all of a sudden, again, you lose your playmaker. You don't know what you have in KJ Hamler because he's missed most of the offseason. So you're trying to design plays for a lot of players that just haven't gotten the opportunity. And now you have a backup quarterback that's coming in. I'm not trying to make excuses completely for Shermer. I think there's been some great scheming that he's done. And then there's been other times where, yes, he's made some questionable decisions. I think that the big thing is, can he have the same playmakers week in, week out to really begin to understand what they do and how to design them to work with Jeff Driskel, and then, of course, when Drew Lock comes back. You got to know your players. And right now he's got so many young players. It's hard to know exactly what works for them, what they like, what they don't like.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Still got some Alberto conversation going on there. I guess we'll see, guys. 4th round pick in a bad tight end class and fell out of day 1 and day 2. So, I mean, the league was not as high on him as some people seem to be. So coming back to this, I guess we should definitely talk. We got, it's almost time's up. There's a question here from Mile High Beauty that I wanted to get to. There she is, or he. Oh, there you go. How do you guys think Josie Jewell's holding up, considering he's been such a liability the last few years? I think Josie Jewell's place in the Broncos right now is temporary. I think that he's probably not a long-term option at that linebacker position, but he's a 4th round pick that's seen the field as a starter. So it took him a few years to get there. But, I mean, I think he's close to an average player, if not a slightly below average player, just because he is a coverage liability. We haven't really seen a tight end destroy him yet, but I do think it's coming. And I'm an Iowa fan, so I was excited to have Jewell. I always thought he was a good player. I loved him and Ben Neiman a lot on that defense for the Hawks that season. Yeah. But it's going to be, I think he's a placeholder for now. He's not a guy that long-term you're going to want as a starter. I do think Alexander Johnson could be a long-term starter, but that other linebacker spot is definitely up for grabs. And Jewell, you're holding it down for now. Maybe he could hold it down another season, but he's not an ideal player for the scheme or Broncos.
Here's the one thing I did notice in the game, especially this last week. Todd Davis was very good at when he made a collision with a running back or a wide receiver, they did not usually move from that spot. Josie Jewell, his collisions have led where they kind of fall ahead for another 2 yards. He doesn't miss many tackles, but they get those extra 2 yards. And there's a couple times where the Steelers were able to pick up a couple extra first downs because Josie Jewell couldn't hold the line where the guy was stopped at.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that you're really missing with Todd Davis not being there this year compared to Josie Jewell.
Yeah. And we got Casey Martin coming in for a positive, looking to be optimistic. Appreciate that. Judy's on pace for 944 yards, which would be awesome. I'm expecting, honestly, he might go over 1,000 yards now because those targets for Sutton are going to have to go somewhere.
Right.
Although, again, it comes back to the quarterback. KJ Hamler looked pretty good. I'd say he looked even better than that. And most of our injuries aren't season ending. So, Casey, we appreciate that. We got Lou Panito coming in here. Good to see you, Lou. Haven't seen you before. Having Albert O couldn't be worse than whoever was in there on 4th and 2 and 3rd and 2 probably as well. I mean, I think at some point, if the Broncos offense is really sputtering, you're going to see it. But for now, they've made it pretty obvious that they want a better blocker in there. And again, comes back to the comments on him. And it's not just Alberto. He's not a good route runner right now either. I mean, he runs good in a straight line, but he turns like a battleship. So we're gonna see if he can grow. I'm definitely optimistic. I think he could become a really good tight end, but I just don't think he's there yet. Tight end's really complicated too. You got to learn both the wide receiver route tree and the blocking assignments of a tackle. So it's definitely a heady position. We got Twitchy Noob coming in. Tim Patrick, literally the same size as Sutton. That should have been an easy plug and play. Yep, Tim Patrick, if you're a fantasy football guy out there and Tim Patrick's still on the waiver wire, I'd be looking to pick him up. I'm not the biggest Tim Patrick fan, but I think he's definitely the biggest beneficiary due to a number of factors.
Yeah, there's a reason Tim Patrick is kind of just a guy. I mean, he might be the same size. He might have decent long speed, but what separates Courtland Sutton is his ability to turn. I mean, this is why you don't always pay attention to 40 times at the combine, because sometimes there's other drills that really show athletic ability. And all the agility drills that he did, he was top notch. And that was something that I've learned in my scouting to pay a little bit more attention to is, can a guy make those quick turns to get himself open? And of course, he's got his ability to go up and high point a ball. I mean, he's always going to have that. But Tim Patrick, it's kind of like Alberto. You don't ask the guy to turn a whole lot. He can't do it at the level that you need him to do it.
Yeah.
But for a guy that's a backup coming in a situation like that, it's not a bad choice. It's just, it hurts because, like you said earlier, we love Mr. Courtland Sutton.
Yeah, I'm so bummed about that. Von Miller, probably my favorite player on defense, and Courtland Sutton, probably my second favorite player on offense because Noah Fant, hashtag Go Hawks. Yeah, so I guess that's the long and short of it. Broncos bringing in Blake Bortles. Drew Lock down, Cortland Sutton down, Draymond Jones down. We're going to see if there's another stack of injuries this week. But guys, it's been an hour. We got to get out of here. Chad gets mad at us when we get too long. So that's going to wrap it up for Building the Broncos today. We really do appreciate you guys spending your Tuesday evening here with us and bringing us into your lives and your homes. You can find us on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and at Nick Kendell MHH. Make sure you go over to milehighhuddle.com, which is an affiliate of Sports Illustrated. Also, guys, on YouTube, like, share, subscribe. That helps us a lot. On Facebook, leave a like, react, and share. That helps us a heck of a lot. Go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and a comment. All of that can help us continue to bring you these Denver Bronco deep dives. It's not just this show. It's a Huddle Up with Chad and Zach. It's Dub Valley Deep Divers with Lance and Eric, and it's the Mile High Insiders with Luke and myself. So really do appreciate that, guys. Follow the Building the Broncos podcast on Twitter at BTB Football Pod. Also follow the main account at Mile High Huddle. Carl, anything you want to leave the listeners on before we get on out of here?
I do want to mention a little bit. I saw somebody saying that the Broncos should look into trading Justin Simmons. I still think that's a guy that you are looking to build your defense around. I'm not ready to trade him. I still think I would sign him long-term just because he is a guy that's obviously he's still staying healthy. Even in a year where everybody else is dropping down, he's out there making plays. Obviously had the big interception, made a couple huge tackles where he just came screaming down the field and got him in the backfield. And so he had a huge bounce back game in this one. I still think he's a guy that you build around for the future. I'm not looking to trade him. If
the Broncos are like 0-6, the deadline's coming, Simmons is not interested in re-signing, and you can get a second-round pick, we can have that conversation, but it has to be a second-round pick or better because the third-round comp pick is probably coming if you don't re-sign Simmons. So it has to be better than that. So we don't want to get too far, guys. We're talking worst-case scenario there. Broncos got a game this Sunday. Tom Brady's coming back to Denver, got a losing record against the Broncos, gets absolutely beat up in Denver, and we might continue that. So we don't know. We'll see. Things are going to be better, guys. It seems bad right now, but every day is a day closer to it getting better. So fingers crossed. It can't get much worse. Everyone knock on wood. Go Broncos as always. We love you guys. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Love y'all. Stay safe.